right, I am horrible at staying on track with doing these regularly. This is going to be another check-in on how the TRT is going. I'm helping my sister and brother-in-law. Sorry, I was kind of in the shop there. Helping my sister and brother-in-law shop for a house at the moment, and they're mostly available on weekends, and I feel like that's been kind of messing with my weekends. Not messing with it, just it's throwing the schedule off. It's usually my weekends are when I have free time, and anyway, doesn't matter. Also, completely unrelated to anything besides, well, not unrelated to anything, but unrelated to how the TRT is going. I want to show off one of our new Grit Nutrition t-shirts. Stay focused, stay ambitious. Available at gritnutrition.com in case you think it looks cool. Anywho, we are today, I think, right at 4 weeks. So I believe today is day 28. So I want to say this is the official 4-week mark. And not, I don't know. I'm still having some of the issues. You know, I was told that by about 4 weeks, that if I was having anything like nipple sensitivity or some bloating or any of that, that should be rectified. And the nipple sensitivity is still there. It's not extreme, but it has me feeling a little bit anxious because I did have, a little bit of like those, lymph nodes or glands or whatever it is. I should better refamiliarize myself with the anatomy. It's been a long time since I've had to worry about any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, anyway, I had that flare up when I was a teenager, like young teenager, like 13, 14, when I was going through puberty, or first started kind of going into puberty. And, it's something that I feel like maybe genetically I am going to be a little bit prone to. And so any bit of sensitivity does have me feeling a little bit anxious. I'm trying to keep a pretty diligent eye on it. I did have a buddy of mine tell me that it's not anything where it's just going to flare up out of nowhere, that it wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I have gyno now, or anything like that. But he did say as long as there is sensitivity, there's a good shot that it is growing a little bit. And, if it isn't going away, that I should probably do something about that. He recommended that I should at least consider doing like an over-the-counter herbal aromatase inhibitor. So like just something that you could get at a vitamin store. And since I used to own one, I had a couple in the basement. And so I decided to try, it's called, I think, Ester Pro Plus or something like that by Anabolic Designs, Project AD. So I'm trying their product out. We shall see. I don't know if this has anything to do with it, because I literally just started using that yesterday. But I did wake up this morning down to 208. That is the lightest I've been since I had that first weight spike where I hit, just kind of overnight bumped up to 210. So seems like probably doesn't have anything to do with that, but possibly, maybe something in it. I'm not familiar with all of what all the herbal diuretics are. I'm familiar with a handful of them. Maybe I should look at a couple of the extra ingredients in there and see if any of them might have like a diuretic property, because also perhaps that's all it was. But anyway, my weight was down a little bit this morning from that big weight spike that I had where I hit 210 and then kind of wasn't really going under 210. Took me, I believe I had mentioned last time, I want to say at least a week for it to actually break underneath 210. I was around 209, and then it kind of was hovering back and forth between like 209 to just over 210. And I had pizza on Sunday and woke up and felt like a water buffalo on Monday. I was 214, but then this morning I was down to 208. So I do feel like probably the estrogen's a little bit more elevated, being a lot more sensitive to like the sodium and just the processed junk food. So that being said, I think I'm going to be probably cutting out the cheat meal on the weekend. It's honestly something that I usually do. All of my days are the exact same in terms of what I eat, with the exception of sometimes I might swap out a serving of fruit for a serving of a different fruit, but other than that, I'm pretty, I don't know, I want to say regimented, but maybe routine would be a better word in terms of what I eat. Largely because of the colitis, it's just easy for me. If I know what I'm eating all the time, it's easier for me to make sure that I'm mitigating any issues with like flares with my colitis, or I'm not going to have anything that might cause me any sort of gastrointestinal distress. And also, if there is ever anything that bothers me, it's a little bit easier to identify what it was. If I'm 99% of the time eating the same thing, it's probably going to be one of those things that was outside of my routine. So anyway, yeah, as far as how I'm feeling, I don't know. I haven't noticed any strength gains. You know, again, my weight is up a little bit. I've checked measurements. I've seen no changes in any measurements thus far. I will, at the end of this, share a video. I did a little comparison of before I started to about 2 weeks in to, this was last Friday, so about 3.5 weeks in, or just over 3 weeks. Not quite 3.5, but anyway, closing in on 3.5 at that point. So some breakdowns of kind of, you know, where I was at, or maybe it was a week, I don't know. But anyway, before I started to, at some point before last Friday and then last Friday, and I did feel like maybe my shoulders and arms looked a little bit fuller. Now again, I'm doing all the posing in the same gym locker room, so that way the lighting will be the same. I'm like making sure it's in the front of the same mirror, so I have the same lighting. And I'm trying to do it basically same time of day every Friday, so it's the same time of week, same time of day, and before my workouts. So the goal is to eliminate as many variables as possible. With that being said, I did feel like my shoulders and arms maybe looked a tad fuller. It wasn't anything significant. It was more in certain poses. I noticed maybe a little extra fullness, like front relaxed pose. I felt like my biceps looked maybe a little bit fuller. My back, again, maybe looked a tad fuller, but it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't significant. You know, I've looked better than this, but I am trying to remind myself too that I'm not dieted down for a competition, and these are all before working out, so no, not even a very mild pump for any of it. It's just going into the gym cold, which I only started doing more recently, getting ready for nationals actually. And my reason for that is some days you might have a better pump than in others. Also, depending on what you're training that day, you know, certain things are going to be a little bit more flattering for running through your posing than, you know, if I hit legs really hard, that's probably not so flattering for running through my posing. But if I did a lot of like biceps and back, or you know, just shoulders and arms, or whatever it is, like, you know, things that are going to kind of pump up my upper body, obviously that would be much more flattering to kind of give that nice V taper to my physique, make me look fuller in the areas I need it, as opposed to when you train legs, usually they're just kind of, you know, bloated and less defined. And my legs being a more dominant body part, I don't need them to look bigger to balance out the physique, so all I would do is lose some lines in them. So day to day, obviously, that can mess with things. I also started doing it because I never get a pump when I do bodybuilding competitions, to the point where I stopped even trying to pump up. I just kind of gave up on the idea of that. So I really wanted to get a better idea of just how I look at any given moment. So I would do progress videos and posing videos always without a pump, like without working out, and I would try and do them like first thing in the morning, and then kind of like middle of the day, and then end of the day, to also get an idea with, you know, food in me at different times, kind of how things do or don't change. But anyway, back to this check-in and how I feel. So I had mentioned in the last video that I did pull back a little bit on the TRT dosage. I was doing 0.13 mLs daily subcutaneously. I dropped that down to 0.12. I know it doesn't sound super significant, but it is a 14 milligram per week reduction. So from 182 milligrams a week down to 168. Now, excuse me, as I've mentioned before, this is just me talking about kind of like me trying to navigate my way through this. The doctor recommended that I start off at 200 and that I do that for at least a month, and you know, that we could kind of go from there. They wanted me to do it for 2 to 3 months before we did blood work again, but they said after a month, if I was having any side effects, or I would call them more unwanted effects, But if I was having any, like the nipple sensitivity or acne or, any of the things that I didn't want, if I was noticing that we could go ahead and talk about possibly lowering the dose or the possibility of introducing an aromatase inhibitor, which it sounded like they'd be more prone to lowering the dose before they'd actually introduce an aromatase inhibitor. So I figured since they were going to be talking about that anyway, one, I already started a little bit lower, I kind of went through all that on my reasons why. But two, I would just go ahead and since I felt like I didn't like how I was feeling, I'd pull back a little bit and see how I felt on a little bit of a lower dose. So I've now been down to the 168 milligrams weekly for probably about a week and a half. So I was about 182 for maybe between 2 and 2.5 weeks, and now I've been at the 168 for, I want to say, a week and a half-ish, maybe just a little over a week and a half. I don't think I noticed a difference in terms of like the mental clarity or energy or anything like that. Maybe slightly, very, very slightly. Like last night, I got to bed a little bit late, and I did feel a little tired this morning. So what I've noticed, for the most part through this, since I started feeling the better sleep and better energy, was that if I only got like maybe 7 hours of sleep in a night, I felt fine. And forever it seemed like if I got less than 8 or 9, I would be tired when I woke up in the morning. But I was waking up and just feeling awesome and ready to go. This morning, I think I only got about 6.5 hours of sleep last night. Just I got to bed late. I slept great, but just not for as long. And I did notice that I felt a little bit tired today. Now, it has also been raining and gloomy and gray for, I feel like, almost 2 weeks straight now. So it could also just be a mental thing that, I like sunshine and warm weather. So maybe that's just wearing on me a little bit. I told myself I was going to jump in a tanning bed today to get a little bit of UV light and see if that helped me. And honestly, I just forgot by the time I was done with my workout. I headed straight out of the gym and didn't even think about it. So I don't know that necessarily that's it. Like I said, it's a one day thing. I'm not going to assume that one day feeling just a tad off means anything. But in terms of the mental clarity and like brain fog or any of that, that's still not there. I still don't notice any of that coming back. A time or two in the past 3 or 4 days, I've maybe felt a little bit less focus when I'm trying to do work. But again, it might just be the gloomy weather. I don't know. I don't want to assume that it's that small reduction in the testosterone or not. But I want to note it because as we move forward with this, if I do continue to experience that, or if it's kind of a regular thing after it seemed like I was impervious to those days, that's something that I want to be noting and acknowledging that maybe, there's at that little bit higher level, I felt a little bit more energy, a little bit more motivation. With the workouts, again, physique-wise, nothing. With the training, nothing. Now, I have been very conservative with my lifting. I've been, not like I haven't been pushing myself, but I've been pushing myself with probably a bit stricter form than I would usually use. I've been going a little bit higher rep range than I would normally train at, largely because I wasn't really sure what was going to happen, and it was probably a very unwarranted concern of mine. But I have friends who've done like some heavy-duty steroid cycles where they put on massive amounts of muscle or tissue, or however you want to phrase it, in very short periods of time, where they're increasing their working weights by 30, 40, 50% in 3 to 6 months, and they end up getting hurt. So for me, because I do normally train so heavy and really push myself pretty darn hard in the gym with typically a bit lower rep range, like a lot of 6 to 8, but 6 to 8 till failure. So by that last set, I might only be getting 4 or 5 sometimes. I was a little bit concerned. So I decided that I would back off. I would use, just try to do immaculate form for everything and progress the weights by the smallest increments I possibly could, and only do it when I had picture perfect form for sets of 10 to 12 on, every set at tight rest intervals, to really try and like max, or, I guess, minimize rather my risk of any sort of injury. Now, again, rethinking this on a dose of 182 milligrams of testosterone a week, now down to 168, it was probably an irrational concern on my part to be worried that I was going to get so strong so fast that I hurt myself, that the skeletal muscle just outpaced the connective tissue to a point where, my body that's been training heavy for 17 years now wouldn't be able to keep up and handle it. But the last thing in the world I wanted was any sort of injury, so I just decided, let me just start this off very conservative, and I can go ahead and reevaluate at some point moving forward if I feel like it's appropriate for me to push a little bit harder. Since I felt like I was almost making negative strength gains in the gym, I did decide going into this week that I kind of revamped my program. I'm doing a lot more 6 to 8 rep range, and I'm allowing myself to use a little bit looser form when appropriate to try and get those extra reps, just to really try and push myself and exhaust myself in the gym. And I'm certainly not stronger than I was 4 weeks ago, but I feel a little bit better in the gym, like going in there and pushing myself to that level. So we'll see what happens over the next few weeks of me pushing myself at a higher intensity, if maybe those strength gains start to pop up. Because again, I wasn't training quite as hard as I normally would, so it might not have really been a fair analysis of how this level of testosterone would impact my strength. So yeah, I guess that's really about it for right now. Nothing crazy. I am still dealing with a little bit of like pimples and stuff, which annoys the heck out of me. I do feel like it's starting to clear up around kind of my forehead and things, so hopefully it's starting to get a little bit better. Again, I don't know if it has anything to do with the over-the-counter, the Ester Pro Plus that I decided to start taking. That's not a product plug, I'm just sharing what I'm using. If I were to talk about a product that I do know that I have tried before getting ready for competitions that I really like for that, is by Magnum, called E-Break. I felt like I would use that stuff and it would just, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, really dry me out. I remember when I would use it getting ready for competitions, and I haven't used it for every show, but the shows I have used it for, I feel like the last week or two, as I'm running through posing in the mornings, I just sound like a bowl of Rice Krispies. Like, just everything would be popping. I'd be, not necessarily a bad way, but you'd be so kind of dry and tight. But I did feel that it really helped me bring a much harder look, than I had typically maybe been able to. Or maybe I just pushed harder and been training longer, and it was in my head, and I just happened to bring a tighter package while taking that supplement. Anywho, yeah, so I hope, I'm on the right path, and, the pimples are going to be clearing up a little bit. I hate going through this again. It was annoying dealing with it for like a decade, between from teens through most of my 20s, probably a little over a decade. And as far as the nipple sensitivity, I don't know. We'll see how this over-the-counter product works, if it seems to be helping. I would love it to be, just like an herbal product would be enough to kind of mitigate this. I know I'm not in a high dose of testosterone, but again, since I did experience a little bit of that going through puberty anyway, I don't know that it would take a high dose for me to be sensitive to and have issues with. So if this product helps out, or whether or not it helps out, if things seem like they're getting better, I'm going to finish. It's a 1-month supply. I'm going to finish that and then not continue use after it's done. See how I feel. If any sensitivity comes back, then I'm going to have to readdress it at that point. But if no sensitivity comes back, then awesome, and hopefully I don't have to worry about it. If no sensitivity comes back, like if it goes away, no sensitivity comes back, and my complexion is staying under control, and I'm feeling good, and my blood pressure is good, which it has been, by the way. It was a little bit elevated. That's almost forgot, I think, to talk about that. So it was a little bit elevated for a little while. It's usually around like 122 to 126 over about 70 to 72. I was seeing it for a little bit, more like 126 up to as high as about like 138 over still 70 to 72. I just took it the other day. I was back down to 122. I had to take it 3 times in a row because the diastolic was down a little bit, and I'm not sure why. That's probably something I could read up on a little bit to see if there's any links between testosterone causing any changes in diastolic. I don't know. So that was just a little odd to me because it was in the like low 60s, and I've never seen it below 70 before, with the exception of having a colitis flare-up. But it was consistently like 122 over 60 or 122 over 59 actually, so lower than low 60. It was like 59 60, but 3 times in a row I was getting that same reading every time. So yeah, I am using one of these like automatic, I don't know how else to call it, cuffs, where you just hit the button and it does it itself. So I don't know if maybe those aren't quite as accurate, but I was getting normal readings before I started anything, because I got it before I started anything, so I could kind of, I was getting my normal like 122 to 126 over about 70 to 72. So I feel like that should be fairly accurate, because I used it for a few days to make sure that it was kind of what I was used to seeing. Anyway, yeah, so if blood pressure's good and I'm not having like the pimples or the nipple sensitivity or any of that kind of stuff when I'm done with this product, then I'll discontinue. And if I'm still not having any issues, then I might see if I can just bring it up that little bit again, back to the 182, because I really kind of wanted to see where I would be at with my blood work and everything else at that 182 dose. And obviously I've been changing things a little bit because I'm concerned about, the other things that are going on that I don't want to deal with. So anyway, yeah, I do feel a little bit less bloated. That's good. I do think that the pimples are clearing up a little bit. That's good. I don't know if there's a change in the nipple sensitivity or not. I feel like maybe slightly less sensitive, but I don't know. If there's any sensitivity that seems outside of the usual, like, climate change or things like that, but just a small amount of sensitivity that I was feeling, like where I'd, do something like prone on a bench, if there were any pressure, like it was abnormally sensitive, and it still is. Like I still notice, I feel it a little bit more, like getting set up on a preacher bench, like as I'm kind of sitting back, if it rubs it a little bit, I feel that more. That wasn't really something I would ever have noticed before. So, yeah, anyway, I'm rambling now, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up. I will throw the little video in at the end here of the comparisons. It's going to be from left to right, so before starting anything to maybe sometime between like a week and a half to probably like a week and a half after starting, and then the last one is going to be this past Friday, which would be just over 3 weeks. And the body weight in the videos, I believe, is going to be about 205, and about 210. So that's that.